Once again, welcome to Aagahi. This is your host, Warisa, and today we will be talking about the psychological dynamics of anger, an emotion that most of us experience every now and then, but it's important to learn how to manage it. Today we have Sister Ansa Ahmed with us, who is the CEO and founder of Hope Bereavement Services. She's a consultant, a trainer, a mother, a businesswoman, and a counselor. Ansa, once again, welcome to Aagahi.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for the lovely, warm introduction and welcome again, Warisa. It's lovely to be back.
Let's get into the topic, inshallah, because this is a very intense topic. So,
Yes.
Ansa, tell us about a little bit about the service that you offer, first of all, in regards to the organization that you have founded.
Yes, Alhamdulillah. Hope Services has now expanded. So we've been running for over 7 years as a, rightly so you said, bereavement support service. For what it started off with was for child loss, for mothers and families who'd had a miscarriage or lost a child at neonatal or stillbirth. We then expanded over the years into a wider bereavement service. And last year, alhamdulillah, we set up as a community interest company. So we now offer nationwide free counseling, free coaching. We also offer trauma programs for men and for women. We'll launch our men one later on this year. We have support groups that run for all types of bereavement, including child loss, including general bereavement. And we have men's peer support groups. Really proud that we've now also launched our Rainbow Mama support group, which is for women who are pregnant again after a previous loss. And we've got independent midwives and bereavement counselors like myself supporting those groups. So exciting new times, and we've completed our 1 year as a community interest company too. So onwards and upwards, as they say, alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah, well done to you. I'm sure you get a lot of du'as from people that you're supporting.
Inshallah. If anybody wants any support, please do. And I'm sure Warisa will be happy to share the details. But you can self-refer yourself or refer a friend or family member. Please do check out hopebereavementsupport.com online.
Thank you so much for that. So Ansa, let's talk about anger.
I think we all experience this at some point. And as an integrative counselor, as a Muslim counselor and practitioner, I understand from the Islamic psychological perspective of when we're working with healing emotionally, psychologically, you have to encompass all of us, all of the fully functioning human being.
Yeah.
My, if you like, core training was person-centered. So person-centered professionals out there will understand. Carl Rogers is who I'm referring to. And it talks about being a fully functioning human being. When we get a client or a person who's disturbed or distressed, they want to go back to being a fully functioning human being. Islamically, we believe from our fitrah, naturally, to feel balanced or to feel fully functioning, we need to experience 4 emotions on a daily basis. And one of them, Warisa, is anger.
Wow.
So when we talk about anger, straight away people are like, oh, you shouldn't be angry. But if you think about Hazrat Umar, they were, very known for their passion, for their anger. It's not a bad thing necessarily. Okay, this is the one thing I want to say straight off. It depends on how you utilize it. Yeah. How does it affect your behavior? Yeah. And how you're reacting. I mean, sometimes anger is not the problem itself. It's whether it's been released. You are the receiver.
Definitely. Yeah.
Or whether you are the one who's projecting and you are the cause.
Yeah.
And how you're reacting, I think if you allow me, I'd like to expand a bit further and say there's 3 different types of anger. If I was to keep it really simple and say, you've got your passive aggression, you've got your open aggression, and then you've got your assertive anger.
If you could give examples for that would be fantastic.
Yeah. So I think we touched upon this before, but we talk about an internal processing and an external one. So, for example, I'll give you 2 examples. Like somebody wants to go somewhere. Like I'll talk about my little boy. So we're going to go do this, put your shoes on, and be like, no, I'm not putting my shoes on. That's open aggression. Okay, angry, I'm not putting them on. I'm not going. And then there can be passive aggressive, where I've known of clients how they deal with their passive aggressive, and they'll talk about how they know they've got to go somewhere. They don't want to go somewhere, and they will wait to the last minute to take a shower and deliberately delay, and something else will come up, and it's deliberately doing things to sabotage other people around you or hurt other people around you without openly coming out and doing it. That's passive aggressive.
Right.
And it's very easy to, because you're subconsciously not wanting to do something, you're very angry about it. You could actually easily make mistakes and lack of concentrate, do something, even with your colleagues in a workplace, because you really don't want to do it. It might be something that's annoyed you. The assertive anger is where you can channel what you're feeling and use it to the advantage of doing something positive or better with it. Okay. So this is where, if it is between two people, two parties, you may be able to sit down, compromise, really mediate, but, you know, be really clever about the statements and the way you speak in terms of how to get the words across. So it's coming from an adult place, but in business matters, it can be used as a clever manipulation, assertiveness, as we say, oh, that person's very assertive. And I think in the times we live in now, Warisa, I can't not mention this, but we talk about Black Lives Matters, okay? We talk about the Black Lives Matters movement and how the Black and Asian or brown person is always seen as the aggressive one rather than the assertive one. Whereas if a white person's being aggressive with you, whether it's passive or assertive, open, they're being assertive. Okay, they're being professional. Or
it's considered as freedom of speech.
Freedom of speech. But if an Asian woman or a man, and I've had this happen to me, I've been stopped by the police before because, I shouldn't have the car that I'm driving, you know, that kind of thing. Or for whatever reason, random, you know, they do this a lot, unfortunately. And when you speak up for yourself and you've got confidence, it's like, can you stop being aggressive, please? I'm actually being assertive, not aggressive. Trust me, you'd know the difference if I got aggressive with you. You know, it's like you try to explain the best you can, but it's very hard, I think, in our cultures to understand the difference as well, because certain cultures, traditionally in the South Asian communities, women and men have a different role. So to some extent, yes, the Fitra explains this should be this way, but there's an ideal, isn't there? A traditional expectation of how a woman's demeanor should be compared to a man's. So this also plays a big fact into what do we deem as angry. What you think is aggressive, I might not think is aggressive. So again, it's very individual. You can't just say, oh, that person's gone from 0 to 100 in a millisecond, because your 0 to 100 might be a lot shorter than mine.
And I think we see this in the workplace as well, that when a female is trying to be assertive, she's classified as being bossy or passive aggressive. Whereas if a man is even like using certain words which are considered as offensive or abusive, he can get away with it, even if he's saying that, oh, it was just joking or it was just a banter. It's okay.
I think it's really important to understand that the main way to tell that there's an issue with anger within yourself, if you wanted to know that you have an anger issue or not, it is that you will get emotional symptoms, Warisa. You will feel emotional symptoms. The way you can reflect and be aware of them is the irritability. Constantly you'll feel irritated by other people. You feel anxious. You feel on edge, like what we call the flight or fight response is engaged. So that kind of level of anxiety. Now, a lot of PTSD sufferers can get this symptom constantly, where you just feel irritated by others. They're constantly feeling this anger brewing and this anxiety. You know, what we say in our language is becheni.
Yes.
You know, you feel this
Ghabrahat.
like, gabrahat and uneasiness, and you don't understand. But it feels overwhelming. And I think it's also, you'll see it happen in your life where you have trouble organizing, trouble managing your time or something, because then it spills out, not just open passive aggressive, open aggressive. And sometimes it can be just like a build-up, like a volcano before you have the outburst. You know, but
like
that is one way of knowing.
It's kind of linked to stress as well, because when your stress bucket overflows, then it can take the shape of anger. And
it also means what's the healthy outlet? You know, if you've got healthy outlet of releasing that anger in a healthy way, then you have, you know, for example, and it fits in Islamically as well, through the 10 different things that you could do, just simple things. There's much more work to this, but I'm going to try and keep it simple for our wonderful viewers listening today. I just want to try and give them small little bites that they can take away. that when you start feeling anger or you're stressed about something or anxious about something, just before you speak, just take sabr, think. This is what Allah says, we should think twice before we say something, because we could hurt each other with our tongues, as bad as with our swords, right? Sometimes even worse, I think. Those wounds go deeper, right? So in the heat of the moment, don't, we can only control how we react. If somebody else is outbursting on you and you're wanting, your reaction feels like you want to go gung-ho, hold back.
Yeah.
Hold back and really take time to reflect. Even if the response in that moment is needed, don't say something you'll regret later. Just make the way to do it, the sunnah way to do it is to, just to stay silent if you can't say anything good, but also to, if it's somebody like your parent, for example, if it's an older person or your partner, it's best to be respectful at all times. And just, I always say be respectful to everyone, regardless of what their age is.
Yes,
and just say, I need some time to think about this right now, what's happening. I can't respond to you right now, but I will do when I'm able to. And just remove yourself from that situation.
Yes.
You're not backing down, you're not showing weakness. And I say that because in our culture, it's very much like, oh, you don't want to be seen as a doormat, right?
Yeah.
You want to be seen as a lion. And what is that exactly? Do I want to be seen as the lion who just fights, and when the fight and flight mode kicks in, is always reacting? You want to be assertive, you want to be confident, but at the same time, you want to stay cool and calm. Because Allah likes a person who is balanced. Okay, as Muslims, we are to live a life of balance. Once you are calm and you're able to express your anger in calm words, as soon as you're thinking clearly, just assertively write down in an unconfrontational way, if that helps you, if you can write it down, or say it, what you're feeling. That is a release as well, writing down how you're feeling. Another thing to do, if you are feeling that irritability all the time and you feel, when you walk away from that situation or you go away, please distract yourself with something healthy and positive. Go for a walk, do some physical activity. I know it might sound crazy, but doing gardening or doing something with your hands as creative is a very good way of therapeutically and psychologically actually calming yourself down.
Yes.
Doing something creative is a really good way. If you've got a therapist in place, go talk to your therapist. Talking therapy is really good. Getting some psychodynamic or relational therapy or CBT even. Taking that time out is really, really important. That's step 4 or step 5, if you like, right at the beginning, links with step 2, that you walk away, that you take that time out. Husband and wives, when they're having their arguments, a small little thing can be escalated so big. And I know many sisters who will say, I can't believe he walked out on me, walked out of the room, how dare he? Actually, my brothers, if you are going to walk out, it's the best thing to do before you say something you regret, because you have been given more power for the rational mind. But before you leave, please be kind and compassionate to your women, whether it's your mom, your sister, your wife, whoever it is, and actually explain. And the women should do the same. If you need that time out, is to be adult about it, to be kind about it, to be respectful and say, I need a timeout. I'm going to go away, and give it the time limit, like how long you're going to be gone, whether it's a day, half an hour, 10 minutes, going for a walk, coming back realistically, and I'll come back when I'm a bit calm and we'll talk about it then. And that's being fair. And that's, not just walking off and leaving somebody feeling rejected or abandoned, or disrespected, like whatever they're sharing. It's about validating other people's feelings. So I hear what you're saying. It doesn't mean you're agreeing with what they're saying.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, but I'm going to take a time out right now. Okay. So please allow me this much time, and I should be back at this time, and leave. If you feel like you can't leave, and this is the case in COVID at the moment, people are stuck indoors, they can't leave. Usi ghar mein kaam karna, you're stuck in the house working.
Where will you go?
You can't just go, hey, I'm off to the office and I'm working. Nah, that doesn't work, brother. You can't use that
So
excuse.
one bedroom flat. What options do you have?
No, you just say, right, I am working mode. I'm turning my back to you now. Walk away.
Yeah.
Can't do that. The swivel chair won't work. You have to physically leave the space. Even if it means just going for a walk around or going to another room or asking to be left alone. It's quite a difficult one. But the sunnah in terms of calming your anger down, we talk about if you're stood, you should sit down. If you're sat down, you should lay down, right? And also the other way around. If you're laying down, sit up or stand up. these different positions actually release different flows of energy in your body as well. Subhanallah, this is why the sunnah is there. It releases the flow in the body to release the tension in the body in different places. So by changing the position, that's why I say walk away, go into a different place. Ideally, go somewhere where you can see green. Green is really calming. We've been asked if you feel down, if you feel frustrated or hopeless or angry, you should look at the color green. Go to the field, go to the park, look at somewhere where there's green so you can see abundance of Allah's creation. And it just helps you feel calmer, but also helps you put things into perspective of why we're here, all part of Allah's creation.
Yeah.
And then try to identify possible solutions rather than reasons or excuses or, getting angry or following the negative strand and thinking, why did they say that? How dare they say that? It's more like, okay, what solution? What is the solution here? Why is this person irritated? Try to put yourself in the other person's feet as well. It's using empathy as a tool, When you do go back, try to avoid criticizing each other. When you are able to calmly talk, try to avoid criticizing and use I statements. Now, when I say I statements, I mean, you say, I feel or I felt.
Right.
Yeah. When you talk from here, from the heart, okay, you have less chance of being criticized by other people. When you say, I think, I know, then people think, oh, you know better than me, do you? It's that kind of instant backup of other people. So it's trying to be a bit more gentle in how you feel and trying to understand, I understand, or I feel that you may, be feeling this. And can I ask if you feel, check in with the other person about how they're feeling. Why are they saying these things? Where does it come from? And alhamdulillah, subhanallah, as Muslims, we are not to hold grudges, okay?
Yes.
We are to make 70 excuses for our Muslim brothers and sisters, okay? I actually use that rule with all of my brothers and sisters in mankind. Doesn't matter if you're Muslim or not, because I think that is the way to live your life if you want a peaceful life.
Yeah.
To be open-hearted, to be forgiving, to be compassionate. It's not easy, but you have to have difficult conversation with sometimes people, because not everybody can feel and think the same as you.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
I used to constantly be told, like, oh, that makes you very vulnerable. Don't you think that's a bit like, risky to be in that way? But actually, no, it's the most freest way to feel.
Yeah.
To love genuinely, unconditionally for the sake of Allah. If I want Allah's love, I have to learn to give Allah's love. If I want Allah's mercy, I have to learn to give Allah's mercy. This is a part of being Muslim, alhamdulillah. This is how we connect and tawakkul to Allah. So in terms of 3 other really quick ones is using humor to release the tension. So that's another way, like to be able to use the humor, to be able to laugh off. And some people, I've done couple therapy with some couples where there will be humor in there, and the other partners get really annoyed. They feel, you have to be really careful how much you use of this, because the other person could feel like you're not taking them seriously enough.
Exactly, I was thinking that.
You're taking them, you're invalidating their feelings again. So it's very important to understand, like, if there's a massive, for example, group argument going on, to use humor to diffuse that would be appropriate, I think, to be able to do that.
Disaster.
But if you did it in a couple session and it was between 2 people, then I think it can be misconstrued and it can be seen as you're just not taking me seriously or you're invalidating my feelings.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to be aware of your trigger points when you are feeling, oh, this is not sitting well, or I'm getting worked up here. A lot of people have different physical symptoms. You can start getting a stress headache, so tension headache around here on the sides. Some people's jawline can start hurting, the back of the neck and the shoulders. You can also start feeling upset stomach. You can start feeling nauseous. You can even start feeling like you've got irritable bowel syndrome. I don't know if you've heard of that. That's where you feel, and this is all part of the flight and fight response. So this is all part of you getting into survival mode, trying to defend that there's a fight coming on, that I'm getting upset, I'm getting angry. Some people get weakness at the legs, or they get dizziness. You could even get tightness of the chest to the point where you can't breathe and you have a full-on panic attack. This is the body shutting down because it's just too scared. So it's about relaxing, calming words, like to yourself. So the breathing is really important. So I'm just going to, if I can, Warisa, talk through how to breathe. People are going to think, what's she on about? Why is she asking us how to breathe?
I think most of us would just grasp for breath. That's it. We don't really breathe.
Yeah. And that's important. Like, alhamdulillah, the ni'amat of breath, the fact that the air that we're breathing, That's given us life. And with each breath, alhamdulillah, Allah has given us that opportunity to better ourselves, to have that opportunity to get closer, to get that forgiveness. But we have to focus on the fact that, how are we taking that breath in? Do we ever slow down enough to see? So I want everybody to just, like, if they are here watching, just to close their eyes if they want, or even leave them open. But at some point in the day, I would say, if you do 5-time namaz, at the end of your prayer, when you're sat there while you're doing your tasbih, you could do this while you're doing your tasbih. You know that. You can breathe in through your nose. Okay, so through your nose, nice and slowly, and you follow that breath all the way down where it goes. And as you're breathing out, you breathe out through your mouth. So really slowly, and you slow it down. I did that quite fast, but you can do it slower. The trick is, as you're breathing out, you say to yourself, Alhamdulillah, Subhanallah, Astaghfirullah. Okay? Even saying Astaghfirullah 10 times, to take those 10 deep breaths, say Astaghfirullah. But you can call on Allah's names to help you as well. Ya Rahman, Ya Ghafur, Ya Rahim. These are really powerful names that give you that calmness, that give you that mercy in your heart, that Raham and that Sabr. You know, you can call on many names, whatever you feel like is you. If you're feeling unjustified, or you're not being, you're in a difficult situation. But for me, those names are really powerful when you're angry. They really help you calm down. They connect you with your heart more. And you can say Alhamdulillah, if nothing else. But even if you wanted to say, stay calm, breathe, relax, saying to yourself, you are safe, saying to yourself, I am safe, I am okay, everything's going to be all right. Just saying those things as you're breathing, taking those deep breaths, and doing that for at least a minute or 2 minutes. Trust me, when you do that for a minute, you'll see how. And we say, how ungrateful are we? If we had to say Alhamdulillah after every breath, would you be able to do it?
No.
At the same time? No. Because we're so busy doing everything else we're doing, even talking right now, even looking after your children, cooking, cleaning, working. And we're breathing the whole time. Our mind is working at the same time. We are cognitively also moving our motor system in our body through our nervous system and telling our hands to do things. And we don't even, subhanAllah, think about the intricate details of how our body works, right? So when our emotions come in, it's releasing different chemicals from our brain, which pumps the adrenaline into our body, which gives you that fight or flight response to either, I'm going to get angry and I'm going to respond, or it's going to be, I need to run and I'm going to collapse. I don't want to know this. I feel like
especially
especially
if you're put on the spot and you're living in a hostile environment, or you have to deal with a difficult person either in your personal relationships or at the workplace, then sometimes you want to try to be calm and not respond or react, but then the person you're dealing with may provoke you to do so.
I think this is very important. The last 10, the 10th advice is that to know when to seek help or advice, know when to ask for help. Because the kind of situation you're talking about is where it would be recurrent. It's something that's constant. So you would know maybe to plan ahead, to plan and be able to safeguard yourself and the other person and others around you. But if you feel that that's not possible, and I know that a lot of our BAME communities out there and our professionals will know that it's a very difficult, challenging world we live in. It's been going on for years. The systematic prejudice and the racism that we face. We have that passive aggressiveness in front of us, as well as the overt aggressive as well.
Oh, yeah.
Some are very blatantly open. I have personally experienced Islamophobia in a workplace. And this was, a government place, a statutory organization. And I worked for a corporate organization for many years. And the only racism or prejudice I experienced was from outside, the public, the customers, but never from the teams. So it's really dependent on where you are, what situation you are in. And I think it comes down to how we have to have that support in place, have to be able to go and know where to get that support. Some people find that the aggression is at home as well as at work, and that can become really overwhelming. And so, again, if your environment, your nurturing environment is a very aggressive place, a very offensive, and you're on the defense all the time, then you naturally become aggressive yourself as well in the nature. So there are anger management programs you can go on to be able to manage better. There are conflict resolution programs that you can go on. But the most important thing in being able to manage and balance our emotion, especially anger, is to hold on to your core belief. Hold on to the core of you, your identity, to know who you are. So as a counselor, when I work with clients individually or in groups, and we talk about identity, we talk about how do we resolve conflict, and we talk about anger, where does it come from? It comes from frustration, or it comes from, frustration of not being heard, not being validated, not being recognized, or not feeling wanted or desired or appreciated. So it's about understanding, breaking it down. Where is that feeling coming from? So, if you Google wheel of emotions, you have a look at that. It will give you the core feelings, emotions, and how they sprout out into different feelings that you experience as emotions. Then the behaviors that it will come out in. It's a really good tool that we use with our clients to work around where does this feeling come from, emotion come from. Really starts to break down that actually, if I'm angry, helps you work out and be really self-aware. Am I angry because I'm sad? Am I angry because I'm frustrated? Or am I angry because I'm feeling abandoned? Where is the anger coming from? To find the root. And then when you have your core foundation in heart and you have that in line, you can then work from that foundation to strengthen, to build that resilience, to be able to not let the emotion overwhelm you or the anger overcome you, but to manage it better.
But I've seen this pattern in certain individuals, certain people who tend to be aggressive by nature. And for the rest of the people, they kind of accept that, oh, this is the way this person is, deal with it. So they kind of make it normal and they expect other people to accept it the way it is. And the actual difficult person, whether it's workplace or your personal relationship, who shows aggressive behavior, they don't acknowledge it. This is the biggest problem, because unless and until they acknowledge it as a problem, they won't seek help. So things like conflict resolution or anger management, it sounds brilliant. But the problem is most people don't even realize that there is a problem with their behavior or the way they communicate with people, the type of language they use.
I think the first thing to notice if you're not aware, so my suggestions to anybody listening who may not be aware that they have an anger issue or other people, they come across as aggressive, is to recognize how passive or how assertive people are around them. So I gauge with how assertive are other people around me? Are they able to speak up freely? Tell me how they feel freely? Or are they walking around eggshells around me and just saying, yes, bag, yes, miss, 3 bags full, miss, and doing everything I ask? That is one way of trying to gauge where do you sit on that spectrum. How do other people feel about you? Because if you are truly an aggressive person and people are scared of you, they're not going to tell you. So you might not know, partly because of that. But also it might be that other people are frightened of you and they'll warn other people off you. Like you said, they're just like that, just ignore them. If you've never been challenged also on your behavior, it can become a really habitual thing that you think is the norm for you. It can become toxic behavior that becomes norm, unfortunately. But you can break that toxicity by recognizing first. And I would suggest whoever's in that situation to challenge that choice. Just because somebody's told me, or that person's just like that, and you just have to deal with it. I'll be like, well, no, actually, I got a choice. I don't have to deal with it. I don't have to deal with anything. You have to have that self-worth, that self-respect, and that honor to understand that you are a person who deserves respect too. Somebody's not respecting you and is making you feel not worthy, then it's down to you to make that choice of what you do with that relationship moving forward. In some cases, Warisa, if you're working in a team, you might not have no interaction with that person. But when you do, and they step over the line of your boundary of respect, you pull them up on it straight away to make them realize, but you can do it in a, as I said, assertive, friendly, professional, amicable manner. So, for example, you send me an email, Warisa, as an example, can you get me this document, please, ASAP? I want it by lunchtime. It's just simple telling me what to do, right? but it's disrespectful because it's not said please and it's throwing orders and everybody thinks, oh, Waris is just a bossy woman, whatever, like you said before. I would take that as an opportunity to come back, not on the email, but actually come to you face to face in a workplace environment, ideally, and say, hey, here are the documents that you asked for, but can I please remind you and ask and suggest that maybe you ask a bit more gently and kindly next time when you need some help from a fellow colleague. It would be a lot more nicer to have a please or a thank you, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, just to do it with a bit of humor. Humor is a really great way of connecting with people. Do it with a smile, the sunnah of our Prophet, beloved Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, to smile. You know, when somebody's been angry with you, the other thing to control your anger with, most importantly, is to remember that while the other person is being angry and hurting you, and might be Muslim or non-Muslim, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Just remember that their good deeds are getting credited into your bank for next life. Okay? Your bank of reserves for good deeds is filling up because they've been mean to you. All you need to do is smile. That is enough to break somebody who's really aggressive and shock them into what's going on. Why are you doing that? Why are you smiling at me? You know,
what's so funny?
What's so funny, you know? But just remember, and that should itself bring a smile to your face that, you know, Ya Allah, this sabr, this patience, this calmness that I'm holding right now is getting me rewards as I stand here for every second. And that brings, you know, a lot more strength and courage to be able to keep calm for longer. Because you know that you're getting rewards for that. And what are we here for ultimately? We're here to serve Allah. We're here. This journey is a very short journey compared to our real eternal Lord. We want to get there with as less, how should I say, trials and tribulations as possible, especially on Judgment Day onwards. So any credits I can get from anybody else, fantastic. Help me out. Help a sister out, you know. That's how we should look at it.
But unfortunately, you do see this, and I'm sure you come across so many sisters and even brothers who may come to you and say, okay, I'm in a relationship, for example, or I have a parent or a sibling, or even somebody at work who is always grumpy, is always passive aggressive, and they are always crossing our limits, the limits that we set, violating the boundaries, and we are fearful of them. But there's not much we can do because they have a position of authority, and we kind of have to be submissive, or we are expected to be submissive. And with submission, they mean that you should allow the other person to mistreat you, to say whatever that comes to their mind. And this is like you can call it a misconception, but we have this in our culture that
we do. Yeah, we do. And I get what you're saying, but I think it's each one that you've mentioned has to have a different solution because of the different level of worth or honor to each one. Your parents, it says it again and again, you can't do off to your parents. But that does not mean that your parents can violate your boundaries, your respect, and your worth and your honor. Okay? When Hazrat Adam alayhi salam was created, Allah said that I have, you know, O Adam and your sons of Adam, I've given you honor. So live an honorable life. That was, you know, tasked and ordained to mankind. And what does that mean to us? Does that mean just because I'm a parent and I can get you to do whatever I want and tell you what to do, even if it goes against your rights? Does that mean I get to control you and intimidate you, even if you're my son, my daughter, my son-in-law, my daughter-in-law? I'm all the power of bees and I can do no wrong. Even if I do wrong, you can't tell me what to do. No. There's a limit, okay? You can still stand up to your parent in a respectful way and amicably and explain this is Islamic and this isn't. You know, I'll start with kindness and compassion. I respect you, mom and dad. I love you, mom and dad, but this is not acceptable, okay? And we as parents ourselves need to be mindful, what are we role modeling to our children? Because the way we behave is what we're role modeling to our children to behave going forward. You know, is it okay for a father and a mother to behave in that way? Not just amongst each other, but also to our children. You know, we're teaching them how to be parents by showing
and they will learn this from their parents, and then this is how they are going to act and behave like their children.
Sometimes it's just sorry, my earphones just fallen out. Sometimes it's just passed on.
Yeah,
generation to
of
generation,
course.
because there's not known any different. Then you talk about siblings. Now, siblings, we talk about blood siblings, the ones that you
Mm.
share the mother's womb with. They're
Yeah.
your kinship.
Yes.
Okay, from an Islamic point of view, you cannot break kinship. Says that again and again. A lot of people take this quite literally. Oh, doesn't matter what somebody does to me, I can't break off ties with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, you can't say goodbye to them. You can't completely cut them out of your life.
Yeah, of course.
But you're not responsible for your kinship as you are for your parent. So in our cultures, the daughter-in-laws and the sons are responsible for the parents, and that's not correct. Islamically, the sons and the daughters, your children that you bear, are the ones responsible for the parents.
Yeah.
Anything the daughter-in-laws and the son-in-laws do for the in-laws, the mother-in-law, the father-in-law, it's extra reward. So when they do anything, through love, openly, not willingly, not because they're forced to. When they do it willingly, they give an extra reward. For the children, it is obligation as far as.
But unfortunately, that is not the
It's not the
understanding,
concept.
perception.
But if my brother or sister, so if a brother and sister were having an argument,
Yeah.
and there was causing conflict to the point where it's causing more conflict, more trials, more tribulation, and it's causing fitna, you can't distance yourself, okay? You can tell each other, guide each other. It's like you can take the horse to the water, but you can't force it to drink.
Of course.
You can guide each other, you can tell each other, but you can't rule and order each other in what they do in your life. You can only be there as guides to each other. You should be able to keep an amicable, the kind of personalities we should all be trying to work towards is trying to be open, personable, amicable, follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and understand that we are to be there for everyone, as much as we can, to keep that open door policy, and to be approachable. But that doesn't mean that should be at the detriment of your own beliefs and your own faith and your own values in connected to Allah.
And also, if there is a risk of significant harm to yourself or a loved one, then you really need to consider what's more important in,
And there are lots of, moving on, that's the severe end of anger, if you like, where there is domestic abuse. Domestic abuse doesn't just occur, and I say domestic abuse because domestic violence always, for me, insinuates just physical violence. Domestic abuse is more appropriately on all aspects, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, financial, cultural, spiritual, faith-wise, on all aspects, even gender-wise. Like there's so much domestic abuse that goes on within intergenerational family members, not just a husband and wife.
Yes.
And if we see that kind of oppression, you remember, as a Muslim, we are not to oppress anyone, but we're also not to be oppressed. We have to stand up against it. So that is part of your duty as well, that insaf ke liye, you have to do that.
And that's not sabr. That is not sabr. To suffer oppression, to allow someone to hit you, hurt you, manipulate you, gaslight you, that's not sabr.
No, it's not sabr. That is oppression, and you're allowing that oppression. It's about your choice. It's about understanding that you're standing up for yourself. I think that's really important. A lot of people think, in our culture especially, I think as well, domestic abuse is always seen as domestic violence. Ki wo marta hai. Wo marta to nahi. He doesn't hit you.
So what if he's mentally torturing you?
Yeah, but there's torturing on many different levels. What if he's hurting you in other ways? And I hate to say this, but there are lots of things going on, like child sexual abuse, pedophilia, okay? Yes. When there's abuse going on in that sort, it's brushed under the carpet. It's not talked about in our community. There's a lot of anger that can be bottled up and can come out in different ways as a grown-up. And it's really difficult to explain, even for a wife or a husband, if they're having any physical intimacy problems, if there's violence or abuse in that way. And women don't speak up about that because it is dishonorable.
Yeah.
Quite scary to talk about, this man's really doing this to me or forcing me this way. How do you speak up about those things?
And again, there are misconceptions and stereotypes attached that, as a woman, you have to be submissive and never say no, and all these things attached.
As long as there's lots of different things about this, and this is where I think, from an Islamic perspective, we need to reach out to our scholars, our imams, alimas, who can give us that guidance from a spiritual point of view, but also, rightly so, seek out the support from family members who are receptive, who are open. Go to your local services, authorities to get advice. They don't, just because you're getting advice doesn't mean something bad's going to happen or they're going to come and lock somebody up. But know your rights. Educate yourself on your rights from your faith perspective, as well as from the country you live in terms of your civilian rights, your human rights. I think this is really important to know. Seek the help psychologically and emotionally, and reach out and get counseling, psychological support to be able to get that empowerment, because that's what counseling is there for, is to help heal the traumas, to unstuck the traumas, but also to empower the clients to become more fully functioning, more aware, of what
Because you
their
don't
rights
want
are.
to, you don't want to carry that baggage, that trauma all your life, and then pass it on to your kids. And it's not just going to affect you psychologically, but even physically. You will get ailments and illnesses, and you won't be able to find out why I'm getting these migraines or
Warisa,
headaches.
honestly, in my practice, my private practice, I only see clients in my private practice now. Obviously, I am the
Mm.
CEO of Hope and the founder, and I work in management perspective there, and I supervise it. But in my own private practice, I have so many male clients coming through, which is why I set up the men's peer support group in Hope
Yeah,
Services. I now have got the trauma healing program launching soon in November for
brilliant.
men. And that's a free program, by the way. We're looking to get
Oh,
funding
wow.
in to cover a few men to join. So please, any men out there who want to come on to that, get in touch with us and we'll be able to put your name down in the waiting list for it.
Yeah.
But that was specifically there because so many men were coming through. I do a lot of, legal reports for immigration cases. So
Right.
immigration cases, providing psychological support reports,
Mm.
for clients who are not getting indefinite leave or who've suffered so much domestic abuse. It's unreal. Vulnerable brothers and men who are coming from other countries into this country, into a marriage where they've been beholden or overwhelmed by the power imbalance, because they're reminded every day, I've got the leash on you
Mm.
and I am the one in charge of you. I can click my fingers like this and this
And send
country
you
will believe
back.
me and send you back to where you came from if
Yeah.
you do not do X, Y, Z.
Mm.
It's quite scary how, and these are Muslim families, how the fitra or the roles of an Islamic marriage are really misconstrued, and how that should be. I see it
And
happen with women too, but the
yeah.
increase in men don't speak up about it as much. And that's the scariest thing. I've had people with
Because they feel
suicidal thoughts.
embarrassed, and also the stigma that, oh, you're not man enough,
Yeah,
how can you allow this to happen? You should have
that's
stopped.
right. Absolutely. And it's to do with the culture. It's to do with the expectation, again, from the culture,
Mm.
that the man must be hard and the man shouldn't cry and the man, shouldn't be underneath his wife's thumb. How can a
Yeah.
man be abused by his woman? He should be the one
Yeah.
abusing. That's condoned.
Yeah.
That's okay. But
Yeah.
as soon as it's too shameful, we don't want to know you, that kind of stigma.
Yeah.
It takes a lot for a person to speak up and get through that. And sadly, I don't think that's always easy in our communities and our cultures. And what happens as a result, Warisa, is that you get a lot of walking wounded walking around.
Oh, yes.
We call the walking wounded suffering from PTSD
Mm.
symptoms. And it can
Sometimes
get quite
complex
complex.
PTSD. Yeah.
I was just going to say, complex PTSD becomes more chronic, becomes more complex, the longer left untreated. And a lot of people won't recognize it'll just be irritability, it'll just be jumpiness. But there's grinding of
Nightmares,
night terrors,
withdrawal.
grinding of the teeth,
Yeah.
emotional numbness, hyperarousal. There is so many different cluster symptoms and different symptoms within that to show you how you could be suffering from PTSD, and you won't even know it until you
Yeah.
sit down, which is where the trauma healing program comes in and breaks it down and helps you understand how to work on it and manage it, and hopefully, inshallah, bring
This,
those walls down.
yeah, this reminds me of something I read a few days ago. Talking about the emotional manipulation and
Mm.
psychological torture, what it does to your brain. Like it
Yeah,
shrinks your is a
yeah,
hippocampus or amygdala, and it
yeah.
secretes certain hormones, and it affects your memory. So you end up with
Yes,
memory loss. You cannot focus on your work.
no,
You tend to dissociate yourself from people,
mm.
from things that you used to enjoy. It totally changes you as a person. And people don't realize, because like you said, कि जब तक मार नहीं पिट रही या कोई पिट नहीं रहा, so we don't consider it as a
No,
form of abuse. But I think emotional manipulation, especially people who are living with narcissists, um, It's the constant mind games, the passive aggressive attitude, selection of words. In the long run, it really does take its toll. And
It does.
by the time I think people realize the damage that has been done, sometimes it can be too late. People end up in hospitals and, have nervous breakdowns.
I've had 3 clients in my working time so far. 2 were male, 1 female. Both attempted suicide. 1 nearly successful, come back from the edge, and one of them was, while I always work with my clients with that safety and say at the beginning, if I know these are the questions we ask in assessment anyway, to say while we're working together that you don't attempt suicide, that you don't self-harm in any way. That's one of the ways of working safely with a client who has suicidal tendencies. And unfortunately, it can get to that point. And what I find is, because the men find it extra hard to speak up in our communities around mental health or anything to do with abuse, it's easier almost to just end life. You hear higher rates of men who sadly take their life because they can't face it. They can't face the shame. They can't get over they're exhausted, Warisa.
The pain is overwhelming. It's overbearing, the pain.
The emotional drain is in a physical exhaustion as well. I've had clients come who can't explain the pain they experience. They've been to the doctors, had all the blood tests. They do not know why their body aches so much. There's no diagnosis. There's nothing wrong with them medically, but there is pain in their body, that they're feeling overexhausted. And it is the psychological trauma that stays there, the PTSD symptoms that do that. And one of the things that you can find from PTSD symptoms is the anger. That you go from 0 to 100 instantly. That there is no slow build up. It's instant, because you're already there. You're already there, hyper aroused, and you're anxious all the time. You are working on the eggshells. You're already worked up. You are highly strung already. So when it becomes something irritates you all the time, it just builds up to the point where you just snap. And you'll see this when some people be like that with their children as well. SubhanAllah, they just snap at their children. Start shouting, not just like, can you please do this? I'm going to count to 5, or I'm going to give you a 3rd time. It's just screaming at your child. Shouting. Sometimes even physically outbursting.
Throwing things around. That's
another thing. Can get violent or aggressive between partners. It's lots of different things that can happen. And I think it depends on how that person is in themselves, their temperament, their script, their personal script, and what they've been through. But alhamdulillah, I can see that there is much different support agencies out there, including ourselves, who are doing a lot to help people with that. And funny that you talk about anger itself. We've got our anger management workshop coming up in this month. So if people go on our website, you'll be able to see. And Warisa, of course, you're hopefully invited to as well if you come to it. And we've got a professional called Nathan Gould coming to deliver that workshop for us, and he works with anger and anger management as well. It's just going out there to give yourself the best tools you can. It is a workshop for professionals, but if anybody wants to come along and join and they're not able to afford it, please don't be put off, because that is an income for us. We are a not-for-profit organization, but we still keep the prices low. I'm sure, Warisa, there are lots of other Gora organizations out there who charge skyrocket where they can for the money. But I'm a black-led organization, and I'm trying to make sure that more of our brothers and sisters can access these courses at a reasonable price. Even if you can't afford the price that's advertised, please do email us, and we do give free spaces out, because I want to make sure that we do have our brown brothers and sisters and our black brothers and sisters there as well, because it's important for us to get the opportunities the same as other people, because that's one thing that I really believe in working hard on, in terms of helping reduce that health outcomes inequalities, as well as the personal development, professional development inequalities as well that we have. It's not easy to get to where we are sat right now, Warisa. It was very hard, right?
Yeah, of course, you have to go through so much. You have to go through a whole process to be where you are.
And that can build up a lot of anger. When you're taught as a child that you're going to have to work 10 times as hard. Your friends are playing outside. Yeah, but John can play outside. Yeah, but he's white. Your friend is white, he doesn't have to jump through as many hoops. You, my son, have to sit down and study your books 10 hours longer because you're going to have to jump even higher to get through the hoops he has to get through. And that is taught still in this generation, Warisa, sadly, in this generation. It's still taught to our children now that you're going to have to work harder, you're going to have to stand up taller, and you're going to have to work for longer.
Yeah. True.
To get to where other people are around you, because there is that prejudice, that systemic prejudice, right from the top to the grassroots. And that affects your mental health, your emotional health. It affects the resilience. In some ways, I think it makes us more resilient because we're trained that way at a young age, but it can also get to a point where it's just too overwhelming. You can get to the breaking point if you do not self-care, if you do not bring up that self-awareness. So very important to keep focusing on self-care. And self-care is not just about taking a bath or watching movies or reading a Mars. Self-care is all aspects of you. So you're a fully functioning human being. So there is the jism, the body. There is the qalb, the heart, the aql, the mind. You've got the nafs, which is the soul, but you've also got the spirit, the ruh. So we need to work on all aspects of us as self-care. So it might mean I read my namaz and I attend on time, but I also make sure I eat properly. I also make sure I sleep properly. I also make sure I put the right kind of food for my mind to read or to educate myself, to take in what's good for me. I also make sure that I abstain as well as push myself where I need to in order for my nafs to feel balanced. People also give nafs a bad name, just like anger, like they think, oh, nafs is a bad thing. Nafs is a good thing. You need the nafs to keep you going, to keep you strong and stuff, but you need to keep it balanced, to keep control over what you're doing.
I mean, there are categories of nafs, and
yes,
how to create
exactly.
a balance within nafs al-mutmainna and nafs amara. That's a separate topic altogether.
But it's all part of how we have to build that education, that awareness of ourselves.
SubhanAllah, Ansa, I mean, if you read history, Islamic history, right? All of these topics have already been covered.
Yes.
So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam being rahmatul lil alameen, rahma. I mean, just this word rahma. If you focus on that, sulah rahmi with others, being kind and compassionate with others. But before that, you have to be kind and compassionate with your own self. But unfortunately, we see this, that people, we ignore ourselves because we're so focused on doing things for others around us that we tend to neglect our own nafs, like you said, our own psyche, our own soul. And then we reach our breaking point. And that's when we realize, you know what, we should have done something for self-care. So tell us about, you spoke about feeling angry and being aggressive verbally, physically. But what about those people who are unable to express their anger or resentment, or when they are hurt, or when they have been oppressed, and they, instead of releasing it or channelizing it, they take it on themselves. They take it out on themselves, like into aggression.
It's not necessarily take it out on themselves. It actually becomes very internalized. Like you said, it becomes traumatic. It's stuck trauma. So it's something that becomes building up of resentment. It can become grudges. It can become bitterness. It can become quite distancing, isolating from other people, lack of trust in other people. You won't have that many close intimacy or intimate relationships like, with friends or family. It will always be that skeptical view rather than that open, optimistic view. So it kind of shapes your personality to become much more, I guess, negative in a way as well, but also more sad, more risk of anxiety, but depression, self-harm, suicide, things like this, like negative suicidal ideation or self-harm ideation, self-blame, guiltiness, not feeling worthy enough, all these things, lack of self-esteem, lack of self-confidence, all these things can come out. And it really comes down to hopelessness.
And that can lead to depression, right?
Yes. I mean, at the end of the day, depression can come from many different things, but that's definitely one of the things it can come from. Anger itself is not a condition, okay? No matter what different types we're talking about, anger itself is a symptom of many different mental health conditions that can happen. So depression can have anger in it as one of the symptoms. And I think it's that confusion, not knowing, not being able to express what you feel can actually become built up, or it can just become part of who you are as a person. You might feel that you can, some people quite happily not expressing how they feel. They want to keep it to themselves and only express it on the prayer mat to Allah and believe that Allah will guide and do everything. And that's fine if it works for you. But what I'm saying is everybody's individual, Warisa.
Yeah.
So it's not one brush or one ideology will fit everybody. It's different for everybody.
Our needs are different.
But yeah, our needs are different. So it's taking that, I guess, person-centered approach when we are talking to our friends, our family members, our spouses, our children, our mother, father, to work out what's going on for them. What's going on inside. If somebody's really quiet, if somebody's never been quiet before, they've gone quiet all of a sudden, is to be aware. Ask, like a good ideal Muslim, say, are you okay, brother or sister? Is something wrong? You don't seem yourself? Are you all right? Offer that. Let's have a coffee. Offer that. Let's have a walk. Let's go to the mosque together if you're a brother, I'll come pick you up tomorrow. We'll go to the mosque together. Just give them a bit of company. Maybe they want to come out, but they don't want to say it.
But Ansa, what if this person keeps refusing, keeps saying no?
Then there's nothing you can do because a person has to help themselves first.
Yeah.
With any kind of, I guess, change or badlav, खुद को उसमें लेके आना पड़ता है पहले. You have to see that there's a need there. You have to accept it. जैसे गोरे कहते हैं ना, like the first steps to recovery is to accept and acknowledge that there is a problem.
Of course, yeah. Okay. Even Quran says the same thing, that if you want circumstances or things to change, you have to take the first initiative, first step.
And you have to change.
Exactly. So it's not something new, that's what we have been taught. That's what our faith tells us.
Our faith teaches us to be reflective at all times, to keep improving, to keep reworking, to keep striving, to learn and learn and learn to our last breath, to better our own character, our iman, our beliefs, our thinking, our habits, our actions, to keep working on it, never to stop.
Yeah.
And that is a big enough sign to say that we must never fall to complacency, to think that we've done enough, to feel that we are doing nothing wrong, that we are okay the way we are. We should always be analyzing how we are doing and what we could do better.
Of course, yeah.
That's how we should be thinking.
Yeah.
And I think to get into that mindset is scary for some people.
Yeah.
Because
I think a lot of people find comfort and ease in denial. And they tend to project everything on somebody else, like shift the blame. Oh, I wasn't angry, you provoked me, or you said something that made me upset. And because they don't want to acknowledge, again, it comes back to acknowledgement and acceptance. They don't want to do that because it may be a scary place for them to actually admit it was their fault. For some people, it can also be a thing like, why should I apologize? Or sometimes they would apologize, but it's not really an apology. It's like, oh, I know I said this, or I was aggressive. I came across as aggressive, but that's how I am. Deal with it. You get to hear this often too.
I wonder what circles you move in, Warisa, if you get to hear that. I don't know about that, but I think it can be quite, I think, at that point, it's down to you, isn't it, as an individual to decide, do I want to be around this person who thinks, this is who I am, this is how I am? If somebody said that, my response, I think, would be, I feel like saying it straight away, like, I'm really sorry for you. And I feel really sorry that that's how you feel, because at the end of the day, that's really hard work. It's hard work being the big, tough boots. And, this is how I am, get used to it. It's usually a barrier. It's usually a defensive mechanism for something else that's going on, right?
Yeah.
Underneath. It's a protection. It's a means of being defensive and being shut down to everybody else. Don't come near me sort of approach, So there's usually something else going on underneath. That's my first instinct on that. But I think when it comes down to, like you said, people are just sat there quiet. They're not been able to speak up. They're not been able to do anything. And they're just taking everything and looking at, oh, it's somebody else's fault. It's somebody else's fault. This is your life. You got one life, one test, one chance. This is not meant to be our dunya. This is not for our forever home. As a Muslim, as a Christian or Jewish or any biblical faith out there will know that we are waiting to go to our eternal home.
Yeah.
That's the belief.
Yeah.
As a Muslim, we know that this is meant to be a difficult time, a turbulent time. If you've got no stress, no problems in your life, that itself should worry you, because then what's going on? That's a sign. You know, what's going on? You know, if I'm being tested by Allah, great. I'm loved by Allah. Allah's washing me of my sins. Because even one little second, millisecond of khafki, of parshani, of just your heart fluttering that little bit faster because you're stressed about something, is subhanallah, alhamdulillah, washing us of our sins. Because it is a pain that you're going through. It is a trial. It is a tribulation. And for those people who suffer even more pain than that,
yes,
you know, and there can become a time when anger can be so blinding. Why does anger get so blinding? Why does it get you to a place of complete psychosis where you can't even remember what you've done? That you can't see past the red? It's about reflecting on that and understanding that's way past the point of when you should have put your hand up and said, I need some help. So let's get some help. Let's find some help and help that brother or sister, or help ourselves, and understand that shaitan is there to pull us off track, okay?
Of course. That's his job.
That's his job. So he's going to fuel, he's going to, you know, throw more wood in to light that fire brighter when he seeks the opportunity. And that might be through your friend, it might be through your colleague, it might be through your spouse, your mother, your father, your brother or sister. The thing for you to do is to stay cool, to stay calm. Like I said, walk away, move away, take calm and control and collect your thoughts and come back. Take time out, take self-care, you know, and build that sabr. Sabr doesn't just come out of nowhere.
Of course.
And most importantly, in your du'as, ask Allah for help. Because Allah is the one who bestows honor. Allah is the one who gives you that sabr. Allah is the one who makes it easy, or, you know, or testing for you. So remember that Allah is the one that you go to first, and then other people that you go to is also wasila of Allah. They're there to help you because Allah's put them there for you.
Definitely.
You know?
Yeah.
I think this is one thing that always comes to mind for me, Warisa, is when I was losing my children every time, you know, and I keep getting asked, like, how do you do it, Ansa? How did you get through that? You know, losing 9 children, like, how do you do that? How do you bury your children and stuff? And I think it wasn't me. Sounds cliche. You know, it is from Allah, alhamdulillah. Allah, alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me that sabr, has given me that resilience. I am nothing. I'm just a mere human being.
Yeah.
I cut and I hurt just like every single person out there. And as any other woman or mother who ever had lost a child or was scared or nearly came close to it would know that it tears you from limb to limb. And that wound stays with you. That emptiness stays with you forever. And that never goes. But you know what? But because of the love, alhamdulillah, that Allah has put in my heart, I carry those wounds with love. That they are scars and proof that my Allah loves me. You know, that I'm loved by Allah, for He has tested me. And I'm grateful that He's tested me. I'm grateful that all that pain I suffered is, inshallah, you know, made me washed, you know, what's the word? I keep forgetting it now. But, you know, when you forgiven for your sins, you know, it becomes... Yeah, it's almost like a washing, like an ablution of having to go through this life.
Like a purifying...
Yeah, like a purification stage. It's like you are going through this life to get to the next stage. And there's beautiful quotes in many hadiths from our Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam telling us on how we should go through the trials and tribulations in this dunya, how we should be with anger. Even the examples given of their anger is that the most they would show is that they would turn the face away.
Yes.
Okay, they turn their back.
Yes.
And, you know, except for obviously when you're in the field of war and you're fighting for jihad or Islam, they would then, you know, obviously, and that was only for Allah.
Yeah,
when it became personal,
yeah.
If it was for personal, they would step away.
Yes.
That would become a guna.
Yeah.
And this again is to relay to us how important it is to have that assertive anger when we need it, whether it's verbal, physical, mental, whichever way, because it's to get through. You need that bit of nafs, but you're not to use it for personal.
Of course.
Okay, it's to always to speak for justice, to speak of haq,
And
to
Adal
help
is part
others.
of our faith. Adal in Islam.
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
Thank you so much, Jazakumullah khairan, Ansa, for that beautiful talk and that healthy, helpful tips and advice that you have given for people to use when they're feeling angry or they feel they are losing control of the situation or themselves. For any of you who needs to seek support or professional advice or help, you can do so by sending a message or feedback or comment on Hidayat TV's Facebook and YouTube page, or you can visit Hope Bereavement Services website and contact Sister Ansa Ahmed, who's more than happy to support you.
Yes, it's just hopebereavementsupport.com, www.hopebereavementsupport.com. You can self-refer yourselves, and please don't suffer in silence. I think this is something really important that everybody is going to be feeling even more. Now that lockdown is lifting, it's going to become very challenging. I've already noticed that it's become more crowded on our motorways. It's become mad gridlock everywhere, no matter where you go, because people are out now, and still people are expecting you to social distance. So wherever you are, my final message would be to be safe and look after your loved ones as well. And don't be afraid of your emotions. If you are feeling something like Warisa was speaking about earlier and being silent about it, just remember that oppressing somebody is bad, but also accepting oppression is bad. Okay? It's injustice. Whether you are the one delivering it or whether you are the one receiving it, you have to stand up against it. And remember, when something is wrong, Allah tells us we should take our hands up against it, action against it. If we can't do that, we should speak up against it. If we can't speak up, the last resort is to keep hatred in your heart for it. But
Definitely.
there are many things out there that I think that we should be able to speak up against.
Definitely.
And there's a lot of support now available. So hope you all well. Wishing you sending lots of du'as and love for your families, and especially for those who you've lost. I make lots of du'as.